So this is the version we're seeing now. This is the logo for the Great Reset moving forward. So the Great Reset is sponsored by the World Economic Forum. So let's see, how did we get the World Economic Forum? Well, let's go back to the end of World War I. There was a movement that appeared to create a League of Nations, and it actually existed for a few years before it died out. And it sounded wonderfully, very noble. If we can just get a League of Peaceful Nations, then we won't fight against each other and we can have world peace. Well, that sounds great. Unfortunately, it was funded and created by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. So there's just a chance that they might have had some other agenda. Okay, then along comes Roosevelt, who's one of his close relatives was on the board of the Federal Reserve, and he really did probably more than anyone else early on to socialize the US. Not to say he didn't do some really important things as well, but in the perspective we're looking for, he created the New Deal with the excuse of the recovery from the Great Depression. And it ended up in the bankrupting the entire country, and he basically sold us off to the European bankers. We'll go into that at some future date as well. But he got permission basically in a catastrophic time to create all these socialist programs. Then in 1945, after the Second World War, the United Nations was created on a piece of land donated in New York by the Rockefellers and also backed by the Rothschilds. So here they go again. Same year, UNESCO was created. And this was an organization to basically look at the educational and social and governmental aspects of humanity internationally. And they had a lot of globalists, a lot of eugenicists on their core team. Julian Huxley, the brother of Aldous Huxley, was the head of it. He was a very rabid eugenicist and depopulation advocate. John Maynard Keynes, who basically has destroyed the global economy, but he's the most well-known economist in history. Unfortunately, his economics still rule, and that's what's been destroying the purchasing power of currencies worldwide. Margaret Sanger, who was one of the top eugenicists, and then Bill Gates Sr. were all part of UNESCO. Then a few years later, the World Health Organization is created as a spin-off from the United Nations. Now let's just stop for a moment and think, if you had created the United Nations as a front to get the whole world to come together and support a one world government with the bankers in charge, then having organizations to cover each of the different sectors would make a lot of sense. So you'd have a UNESCO, and then after that you'd have a World Health Organization. And then the Club of Rome was created in 1968. And out of the Club of Rome came the Limits to Growth paper, which became the basis of the whole global warming scare. And it was very, very much created for just that reason. They needed an enemy because it was relatively peaceful times. They needed an enemy that humanity would gather around that would create the excuse for a one world government. So then the World Economic Forum was created in 1971 by Klaus Schwab, who's still running it and is really the author of the whole Great Reset. Global warming was created based on the Club of Rome paper and launched in 1992. After they had failed with a global cooling scare in the 70s, they came out with the global warming scare, and they've been a lot more effective, even though it's solely Trump pulling out of the climate accord, which has kept us as a human species from agreeing to transcend all national sovereignty, agree to a global tax, a global government, and global laws to create the one world government. So we're literally a hair's breadth away. We're literally an election count away, because Biden would go back to that whole thing in a moment. Agenda 2130 came out of the whole global warming movement, and it's really the playbook for the communist takeover of not only America but the entire world. And then they were having not all that much success until they came up with getting everybody afraid of for their lives, for health-wise, through the COVID pandemic. And lo and behold, now's the time that the World Economic Forum launches the Great Reset, which is the handbook for a new world order. So that's what the globalist Great Reset is about.